Everyone. This is Julie. If you're growing tomatoes on a balcony or thinking about it, I want to share something that made a huge difference in my garden. This isn't a tutorial. It's just what I learned by watching my plants every day. First, one important detail. My tomato plant is a vining variety, not a bush type, not compact, and that one detail changes everything. Why vining tomatoes behave differently. Vining tomatoes are built to grow. They don't stop at a certain height. They keep reaching for light, for air, for space. In a backyard, they can sprawl on the ground or lean on cages. On a balcony, they have nowhere to go. At first, everything looked fine. The seedlings grew fast. The leaves were green. The weather was good. But about 2 weeks after transplanting, I started noticing small signs. The stem stayed thin and soft. After watering, the plant leaned. When the wind passed through the balcony, it bent even more. Every morning, the plant was leaning toward the light, like it was asking for help. That's when I realized something important. The plant wasn't weak. It just didn't have direction. Why a trellis is not optional for vining tomatoes. When a vining tomato has no support, it spends energy just trying not to fall. That energy comes from somewhere, usually from root growth, flower development, and fruit setting. You can see it clearly. Stems stay thin, flowers appear, then drop. Leaves overlap, trapping moisture. Airflow becomes poor. This isn't a fertilizer problem. It's a structure problem. So I stopped adjusting the plant with my hands and built a trellis. Not to make it look nice, but to give the plant a clear message. The idea behind my balcony trellis, I didn't want anything complicated. I wanted something that made sense for a pot, not a garden bed. I used what I already had. Bamboo stakes and old wooden sticks. Zip ties. Soft string. I placed 3 stakes near the edge of the pot, not the center. That's intentional. The main roots are usually concentrated closer to the center. By placing stakes near the rim, I avoid damaging roots and still get stability. Then I tied the tops together to form a triangle. Triangles matter. They don't wobble easily and they distribute force evenly, which is important on balconies where wind hits from one direction. I made the trellis taller than the plant by about 30 to 40 centimeters. Because vining tomatoes don't care how tall your trellis is. They will grow past it if you let them. How I tie the plant, and why it matters. This is where many people unknowingly slow their plants down. I never tie tightly. Ever. Tomato stems expand quickly. A tight tie today becomes a choke point next week.
This.
I use a soft string and tie it in a loose figure 8. 1 loop around the stake, 1 loop around the stem. The small space in the middle prevents rubbing and allows movement. And movement is important. A plant that moves slightly in the wind develops a stronger stem. A plant that's locked in place stays weak. Every 5 to 7 days as the plant grows, I add another tie higher up. I don't pull the plant straight, I guide it upward. That difference matters. What changed after the trellis was in place? The change didn't take long. Within a few days, the plant stood upright on its own. New growth looked thicker. Leaves lifted away from the soil. About a week later, flower clusters formed closer together. Fewer flowers dropped. The plant looked balanced. This told me something important. The plant wasn't stressed anymore. It felt supported. When a tomato plant feels stable, it invests in reproduction. That's when you get fruit. Watering and disease became easier. Something people don't talk about enough. Structure affects watering and disease. With the plant upright, water didn't splash soil onto the leaves. Leaves dried faster after rain. Air moved through the plant. I saw fewer spots on the leaves, less yellowing at the bottom. Nothing else changed. Same soil, same watering routine, just better structure. Mistakes I made along the way, I've made every mistake you can imagine. I built a trellis that was too short. The plant outgrew it in weeks. I tied stems too tight. The stem thickened and the tie cut into it. I underestimated how fast vining tomatoes grow. They don't wait for you to fix it later. But tomatoes are forgiving plants. Once I adjusted the trellis and loosened the ties, the plants recovered quickly. That's one thing I love about growing tomatoes. They teach you, if you're paying attention. What this taught me about balcony gardening. Balcony gardening isn't about shrinking backyard methods. It's about understanding plant behavior and adapting. A vining tomato doesn't want to be compact, it wants to climb. The trellis isn't decoration, it's communication. You're telling the plant, grow upward. I'll support you. And when you do that correctly, the plant responds generously. The takeaway. If you're growing vining tomatoes on a balcony, don't wait until the plant falls over. Don't rely on fertilizer to fix a structure problem. Build support early. Because with vining tomatoes, the trellis often decides the harvest. If this helped you understand your tomato plants a little better, give the video a like. It really helps the channel. Share it with someone growing tomatoes in a small space, and subscribe if you want more real, practical balcony gardening based on observation, not theory. Thanks for spending time with me in the garden today. I'll see you in the next one.